Hey, what is up, everyone? I hope you guys are doing well. This story is narrated by my friend Frederick. I hope you guys enjoy it, and yeah.
There are sensations that defy human comprehension, experiences so far beyond the scale of mortal existence that language struggles to contain them. To walk as a god, to feel a mountain's worth of blessed steel and ceramite respond to your thoughts as if it were your own flesh. To command weapons that can level cities with a single salvo. To stride across battlefields where entire armies appear as nothing more than insects beneath your feet. This is what it means to be a titan in Warhammer 40K. The Titans of the Adeptus Titanicus stand as perhaps the most powerful conventional war machines in the arsenal of the Imperium of man. These god machines, as they are reverently called, tower hundreds of feet into the air, each one a walking fortress, bristling with weaponry, capable of annihilating entire armored columns. But to understand what it truly means to be a titan, we must look beyond the statistics and specifications. We must peer into the mind of the princeps, the human soul who merges their consciousness with these mechanical deities. We must understand the price paid by those who would walk as gods among men. Before we delve into the intimate experience of bonding with a titan, we must first comprehend the sheer magnitude of what these machines represent. A titan is not simply a large vehicle or mech suit scaled up to impressive dimensions. It is something far more profound and terrifying. Each titan is an ancient relic, many dating back to the dark age of technology, an era when humanity's mastery of science and engineering reached heights that would be considered miraculous by the standards of the 41st millennium. These machines were built to last millennia, constructed with technologies that even the most learned tech priests of Mars can barely comprehend, let alone replicate. The smallest class of true combat titan, the Warhound Scout Titan, stands approximately 45 to 50 feet tall, roughly the height of a 4 or 5-story building. Its crew consists of a princeps and 2 moderati, their minds linked through the mind impulse unit to form a gestalt consciousness that can adequately control the god machine's systems. Despite being classified as a scout, a single warhound possesses enough firepower to reduce a heavily fortified position to smoking rubble in moments. Its void shields can deflect all but the most concentrated enemy fire, and its speed, considerable for a machine of its size, allows it to outmaneuver many conventional military vehicles. But the Warhound is merely the beginning. The Reaver Battle Titan, standing approximately 90 feet tall, represents a significant escalation in both size and destructive capability. Where a Warhound might be deployed for reconnaissance and flanking maneuvers, a Reaver is built to hold the line and break the enemy's will to fight. Its armament typically includes weapons like the Apocalypse missile launcher, capable of saturating an area the size of a city block with explosives, or the Melter cannon, a weapon so powerful it can reduce battle tanks to pools of molten slag. The Reaver requires a crew of 4, a princeps seniores and 3 moderati, each responsible for managing different aspects of the Titan's vast array of systems. Then there is the Warlord Battle Titan, the workhorse of the Titan legions, and the most commonly deployed heavy Titan, standing between 100 and 175 feet tall. Depending on variant and configuration, a Warlord is a fortress that walks. Its twin plasma destructors can vaporize entire enemy formations in seconds, each shot creating a miniature sun that burns with temperatures rivaling that of stellar cores. The plasma is magnetically contained as it leaves the weapon, streaking across the battlefield as a bolt of incandescent fury that melts through armor, flesh, and stone with equal ease. When these weapons fire in sequence, they create a rhythm of destruction that has broken enemy lines on thousands of battlefields across 10 millennia of warfare. The volcano cannon, another common warlord armament, operates on different principles but achieves equally devastating results. This massive laser weapon draws power directly from the Titan's plasma reactor, focusing incredible amounts of energy into a beam narrow enough to punch through the thickest armor. The volcano cannon can fire continuously for several seconds, the sustained beam capable of cutting through fortifications like a cutting torch through paper. Enemy bunkers simply cease to exist when caught in the volcano cannon's beam, their occupants vaporized before they even have time to understand what is happening to them. But the Warlord's armament options extend far beyond these iconic weapons. Some Warlords mount the Sun Fury Plasma Annihilator, a massive weapon that fires plasma charges in a high arc, allowing them to rain down on enemies hiding behind cover. Others carry the Mori Quake Cannon, a weapon so powerful that its shots create seismic shockwaves, causing buildings to collapse and the ground itself to crack and heave. The Bellicosa Volcano Cannon, a variant of the standard Volcano Cannon, trades rate of fire for even greater armor penetration, capable of destroying even other Titans with well-placed shots. The close combat weapons available to Warlords are equally impressive. The Ariok Power Claw is a massive fist wreathed in power fields, capable of tearing apart enemy Titans in brutal melee combat. When a Warlord equipped with such a weapon closes with an enemy, the sight is terrifying. A god machine dozens of stories tall, raising an energy-wreathed fist the size of a building before bringing it down with force measured in thousands of tons. The impact can cave in armor plating, crush internal components, and leave enemy Titans crippled or destroyed. Some power claws also mount heavy weapons like Vulcan megabolters or plasma blast guns, allowing the Warlord to continue firing even while engaged in melee combat. A Warlord's void shields are powered by multiple generators, creating overlapping fields of protective energy that can absorb tremendous punishment. Unlike the single shield of a Warhound, which collapses entirely when overloaded, a Warlord's shields fail one layer at a time. The first shield might absorb a lance strike from an enemy Titan. The second shield deflects a salvo of missiles. The third shield takes the impact of a super heavy tank round. Only when all the shields have been brought down does the Warlord's armor become vulnerable to enemy fire. And even then, that armor is measured in feet rather than inches. Adamantium and ceramite layers thick enough to resist all but the most powerful weapons. The interior of a Warlord is a complex maze of corridors, chambers, and systems. The plasma reactor occupies a substantial portion of the Titan's torso, a massive sphere of magnetic containment holding energies hot enough to vaporize anything that comes into direct contact with it. Tech priests monitor the reactor constantly, making minute adjustments to keep it operating at optimal efficiency while reciting prayers and performing rituals that they believe appease the machine spirit of the reactor itself. The reactor's heat radiates throughout the Titan, making the interior uncomfortably hot despite cooling systems and heat sinks. Crew members learn to work in this environment, their bodies adapting to temperatures that would be dangerous for normal humans. The void shield generators occupy their own chambers, massive machines that hum with barely contained energy. Each generator requires constant attention from tech priests who monitor power flow, adjust field harmonics, and perform the rituals necessary to keep the generators functioning properly. When a void shield absorbs a hit, the generators emit a distinctive whine as they work to restore the protective field. The sound becomes familiar to anyone who spends time aboard a Titan, a background noise that indicates the shields are doing their job. The weapon systems are distributed throughout the Titan's frame, each one a marvel of engineering that would be considered a major installation if mounted on a fixed position. The plasma destructors require their own plasma feeds from the main reactor, along with cooling systems to prevent the weapons from overheating during sustained fire. The volcano cannons need massive capacitor banks to store the energy required for firing, along with heat sinks and cooling vanes that glow red hot after each shot. The ammunition storage for ballistic weapons like megabolters contains enough ordnance to supply a company of space marines for an extended campaign. Crewing a Warlord requires a Princeps Seniores and 4 to 6 Moderati, along with dozens of support personnel who manage the Titan's reactors, void shield generators, and other critical systems. These support personnel are not directly connected to the Mind Impulse unit, but they are still essential to the Titan's operation. Without them, the Princeps and Moderati would be overwhelmed trying to manage all the complex systems that keep a god machine functioning. The support crews monitor thousands of data points, looking for signs of malfunction or degradation that might compromise the Titan's combat effectiveness. They perform running repairs during battles, patching damaged systems, and rerouting power to compensate for destroyed components. They are the unsung heroes of Titan warfare, warriors who face death in the bowels of a god machine, without the glory or recognition given to princeps. The command deck of a warlord, where the princeps and moderati are stationed, is positioned in the Titan's head. This provides the best vantage point for observing the battlefield, though most of what the crew perceives comes through sensors and data feeds, rather than direct visual observation. The walls of the command deck are covered with screens, readouts, and cogitators, all displaying information about the Titan's status and the tactical situation. The air is thick with incense and the ozone smell of active electronics. The sound of the Titan's systems creates a constant background rumble, punctuated by the sharper sounds of weapons fire and void shield impacts. The princeps throne sits at the center of the command deck, elevated above the moderati stations to give the princeps both physical and symbolic primacy. The throne is less a chair and more a control nexus, studded with neural interface points, manual controls for backup systems, and displays showing critical information. When the princeps is fully bonded with the Titan through the mind impulse unit, most of these physical controls become redundant. The princeps can command the Titan through thought alone, but the manual controls remain as failsafes, ways to maintain some level of control if the MIU connection is disrupted or degraded. The moderati stations surround the princeps throne, each one dedicated to specific systems. One moderatus might control the arm-mounted weapons, while another manages the dorsal weapons, and a third handles void shields and defensive systems. During combat, the moderati work in constant coordination with each other and the princeps, their actions synchronized through the Gestalt consciousness created by the mind impulse unit. This coordination is so complete that outside observers sometimes describe it as watching a single entity with multiple bodies, each performing their assigned tasks in perfect harmony. But even the mighty warlord pales before the apocalyptic majesty of the Imperator Emperor Titan. These colossal god machines stand anywhere from 140 feet to 500 feet tall, depending on the source and specific variant. An Imperator is not merely a weapon, it is a mobile fortress, a cathedral of destruction that houses hundreds of crew members, tech priests, servitors, and sometimes even detachments of Imperial Guard soldiers. The main armament of an Imperator typically includes weapons like the Hellstorm cannon, a massive rotary cannon that fires shells the size of automobiles, or the Plasma Annihilator, capable of creating miniature suns that consume everything in their path. Some Imperators mount close combat weapons like the Titan Power Claw, massive energy-wreathed fists that can tear apart enemy Titans in brutal melee combat. The sheer scale of these machines is difficult for the human mind to process. Imagine standing at the feet of a warlord Titan. You would need to crane your neck back at an uncomfortable angle just to see the top of its legs. The ground trembles with each step it takes, a rhythmic earthquake that announces its presence long before it comes into view. The air around a Titan shimmers with the heat radiating from its plasma reactor, hot enough to cause discomfort from dozens of yards away. The sound of a Titan on the march is a symphony of mechanical thunder, the grind of servos, the hiss of hydraulics, the deep bass thrum of void shield generators, all combining into a noise that can be felt in the bones as much as heard with the ears. But size and firepower alone do not capture what makes a Titan truly terrifying. What sets these god machines apart from mere super heavy tanks or mobile artillery platforms is the intelligence that guides them. Not artificial intelligence, which is strictly forbidden by the tech priests of Mars and the laws of the Imperium, but something far stranger and more unsettling. Each Titan possesses what is known as a machine spirit, a form of consciousness that emerges from the incredibly complex systems that comprise the god machine. Whether this machine spirit is truly sapient, whether it possesses anything resembling a soul, remains a matter of theological debate among the cult mechanicus. But what cannot be debated is that it exists, that it has personality and preferences, and, most disturbingly, hungers. The machine spirit of a Titan is ancient, often thousands of years old, shaped by millennia of warfare and the personalities of countless princeps who have bonded with it over the centuries. Some machine spirits are noble and stoic, accepting their role as protectors of humanity with something approaching grace. Others are wrathful and bloodthirsty, barely contained forces of destruction that strain against their princeps' control, always seeking to unleash their full fury upon the enemy. Still others are capricious and temperamental, requiring constant appeasement and careful handling lest they rebel against their crews at critical moments. This brings us to the heart of what it truly means to be a Titan, the relationship between human consciousness and mechanical intelligence, the merging of flesh and steel that creates something greater and more terrible than either component alone. To understand this, we must examine the role of the princeps, the individual chosen to command a god machine and bear the tremendous burden that comes with such power. The path to becoming a princeps begins in the Collegia Titanica, the training academies of the Adeptus Titanicus, where potential candidates are tested, evaluated, and if found worthy, prepared for the enormous responsibility they will bear. Not just anyone can become a princeps. The neural architecture required to successfully interface with a Titan's systems through the mind impulse unit is exceedingly rare. Perhaps 1 human in 10 million possesses the correct combination of mental flexibility, strength of will, and neural compatibility necessary to even attempt the bonding process. Of those who possess the basic requirements, perhaps 1 in 10 will survive their first true connection with a Titan's machine spirit. The selection process is rigorous and merciless. Candidates undergo years of training, beginning with simulations and progressively advancing to actual connection with a Titan's systems under carefully controlled conditions. They learn the liturgies and rites of activation, the prayers and benedictions that must be spoken to awaken a god machine from its slumber. They study tactics and strategy, learning how to deploy Titans effectively as part of combined arms operations or in the devastating lance formations that have broken enemy lines for 10,000 years. They train their bodies as well as their minds. For even with the mind impulse unit handling most of the actual control, the physical demands of piloting a Titan are immense. But all of this preparation, all of these years of training and testing, cannot truly prepare a candidate for their first true joining with a Titan. Nothing can prepare them for that moment when the mind impulse unit activates and their consciousness begins to expand beyond the confines of their skull. Imagine, if you can, what it feels like when the connection is first established. You are seated in the princeps throne, a massive chair studded with cables and interfaces, mounted within the head of the Titan. Around you, your moderati are settling into their own stations, their voices coming through the Vox network as they run through pre-activation checks. Tech priests move through the cramped confines of the cockpit, making final adjustments and murmuring prayers to the Omnissiah. The air is thick with incense and machine oil, the smell of sacred technology and ancient power. Then the tech priest performing the rite of activation begins the final sequence. The mind impulse unit, a crown of cables and neural interface nodes, descends onto your head. You feel the cold touch of the connection ports as they interface with the neural plugs that were surgically implanted into your skull during your training. There is a moment of discomfort, a sensation like cold water being poured directly into your brain. Then the connection activates. The first thing you feel is vertigo, a sense of your perspective suddenly shifting and expanding in ways your brain was never designed to process. You are no longer confined to the space behind your eyes. Your sense of self begins to spread outward, flowing through circuits and conduits, expanding to fill the enormous frame of the god machine that surrounds you. You feel metal, as if it was skin. You sense the flow of power through systems, as if it were blood through veins. The Titan's sensors become your eyes, giving you a perspective that towers dozens or hundreds of feet above the ground. This initial expansion is overwhelming. The human brain is not meant to process sensory input at this scale or from this perspective. Many candidates panic at this stage, their minds recoiling from the sheer alienness of the experience. If they are fortunate, they simply lose consciousness and can be disconnected before permanent damage occurs. If they are less fortunate, their minds shatter under the strain, leaving them catatonic or worse. The mind impulse unit is an incredibly powerful and incredibly dangerous piece of technology, and the price of failure can be measured in destroyed minds and broken bodies. But if you survive those first terrifying moments, if you can maintain your sense of self, Even as it expands to encompass a machine weighing thousands of tons, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to adapt. Your brain, that most flexible and remarkable of organs, begins to process the new sensory input. The Titan's systems begin to make sense. You learn to interpret the data flowing from dozens of sensors and monitoring stations. You begin to understand the language of the machine, and then you feel it. The machine spirit, the ancient intelligence that dwells within the Titan's systems. It is aware of you now, examining you, testing you, deciding whether you are worthy to command its vast power. This moment, more than any other, will determine whether you become a true princeps or just another casualty of the bonding process. The machine spirit is not human. It does not think as humans think or feel as humans feel. Its consciousness, if it can be called that, is shaped by millennia of warfare and destruction. It knows only the thunder of its weapons and the satisfaction of enemies destroyed. It is a predator's mind, ancient and patient, and utterly without mercy for anything that stands before it. When it turns its attention to you, you feel like prey caught in the gaze of something vast and terrible. Some machine spirits are relatively benign, accepting their new princeps with something approaching curiosity or even welcome. These are the fortunate cases, the Titans, whose machine spirits have been properly maintained and appeased by generations of tech priests and previous princeps. But others are hostile, resentful of the need for human control, or simply so hungry for battle that they view their princeps as an obstacle to be overcome rather than a partner to be worked with. In these cases, the battle of wills that follows can be as intense and exhausting as any physical combat. You must assert yourself. You must make the machine spirit understand that you are not simply meat to be burned out in pursuit of its endless hunger for destruction. You are the princeps. You are the one who will guide it to appropriate targets, who will ensure that it survives to fight again, who will give it purpose beyond mere slaughter. But you must do this without breaking the machine spirit's will, without crushing the very thing that makes the Titan more than just a very large tank. It is a delicate balance, a dance of dominance and submission that will define your relationship with the God machine for as long as you serve as its princeps. This process can take hours or days, or, in some extreme cases, weeks. The candidate remains connected to the Titan throughout, sustained by nutrient feeds and stimulants, their body wasting away even as their mind expands to encompass the God machine. Tech priests monitor vital signs and make adjustments to the mind impulse unit's settings, trying to find the perfect balance that will allow human and machine to coexist. Moderati stand ready to take over critical systems if the princeps begins to fail. And through it all, the machine spirit watches and waits and judges. If the bonding is successful, if you can establish a working relationship with the machine spirit, something extraordinary happens. You and the Titan become one. Not completely, not to the point where you lose all sense of individual identity, but enough that the boundaries between human and machine begin to blur. You can feel the Titan's systems as extensions of your own body. When you think about moving forward, the Titan's legs respond without conscious thought, just as your own legs would. When you focus your attention on a target, the weapon systems track to that point with the ease of pointing your finger. The massive God machine becomes, in a very real sense, your body. This is both exhilarating and terrifying. The power at your command is beyond anything most humans will ever experience. You can level buildings with a thought. You can stride over obstacles that would stop conventional military forces cold. You can stare down at armies and know that they cannot truly harm you, that their weapons will splash uselessly against your void shields, while your own weapons reap them like grain before the scythe. For those brief moments when you are fully bonded with the Titan, you are more than human. You are a god of war made manifest. But this power comes at a cost that many princeps do not fully understand until it is far too late to turn back. The mind impulse unit is not a one-way street. Just as your consciousness flows into the Titan, so too does the Titan's machine spirit flow into you. Over time, repeated connections begin to change you in subtle and not so subtle ways. You start to think more like the machine, viewing problems in terms of targeting solutions and optimal firing patterns. You begin to distance yourself from the concerns of normal humans, whose lives seem brief and insignificant compared to the centuries-spanning existence of your Titan. You develop the machine spirit's hunger for battle, feeling restless and incomplete when you are disconnected from the god machine for too long. This process is called bleeding, the gradual erosion of your humanity as the machine's nature seeps into your consciousness. All princeps experience it to some degree. The question is not whether you will change, but how much you will change, and how long you can maintain enough of your original personality to remain effective in your role. Some princeps last for decades, maintaining a careful balance between human and machine. Others burn out in years or even months, their minds consumed by the machine spirit until they become little more than organic components of the Titan's control systems. The Collegia Titanica monitors its princeps carefully for signs of excessive bleeding. Regular psychological evaluations, neural scans, and observation of behavior, both on and off duty, help identify princeps who are approaching dangerous levels of machine influence. But the truth is that the Adeptus Titanicus needs every qualified princeps it can get. Titans are irreplaceable relics, each one worth more than entire planetary defense forces, and letting one sit idle because its assigned princeps is showing signs of instability is often considered an unacceptable waste of resources. So princeps are allowed to continue serving long past the point where a truly objective evaluation would recommend their removal from active duty.
You know, I have to pause here for a moment because this aspect of Titan lore has always fascinated me on a deeply personal level. When I first started researching Warhammer, I'll admit I saw Titans as just really cool giant robots, but the more I dove into the actual experience of it being a princeps, the more unsettling it became. What really gets me is that the Imperium presents this as an honor. They tell these warriors they're being elevated, that they'll become living gods, but when you really think about it, they're describing a slow motion horror story. You're not becoming a god, you're being consumed by a machine, piece by piece, until there's almost nothing left of who you were. I think that's what makes Titans some of the most tragic figures in the entire 40K universe. Space Marines at least get the brotherhood, the clear purpose, the certainty. Guardsmen have each other. But princeps, they're fundamentally alone in a way that's hard to articulate. Anyways, I'll let you guys continue the story.
Pushing further and further into the merging with their machine, until the line between human and Titan becomes almost impossible to discern. Now that we understand the fundamental nature of the human-machine bonding, we must examine more closely the different classes of Titan, and what it is like to serve as princeps for each type. The experience varies significantly, depending on the size and role of the god machine, and each class presents its own unique challenges and rewards. The Warhound Scout Titan, despite its classification as the smallest true combat Titan, is far from a minor war machine. Standing approximately 45 to 50 feet tall and weighing around 400 to 500 tons, a Warhound is built for speed and maneuverability rather than raw firepower. Its primary role is reconnaissance and flanking attacks, using its relative agility to outmaneuver heavier enemy forces and strike at vulnerable points in enemy formations. To serve as princeps of a Warhound is to experience war as a predator hunting prey. The Warhound's machine spirit is typically more aggressive and impatient than those of larger Titans, reflecting its role as a hunter rather than a siege engine. When you bond with a Warhound, you feel that predatory nature flowing into you, sharpening your senses and making you hyper-aware of potential threats and opportunities. The Warhound wants to move, to stalk, to kill. Keeping it focused on reconnaissance duties when there are enemies in sight requires constant effort and a strong will. The crew of a Warhound consists of the princeps and 2 moderati. Each moderatus is responsible for one of the Titan's primary weapon systems, which typically consist of weapons like the plasma blast gun, Vulcan megabolter, inferno gun, or turbo laser destructor. The princeps maintains overall command and controls the Titan's movement and void shields, while the moderati handle targeting and weapons control for their assigned systems. This division of labor is necessary because even a warhound's systems are too complex for a single human mind to manage effectively in the chaos of combat. The sensation of piloting a warhound is unique among Titan classes. You feel the ground passing beneath you with each swift stride, the Titan's legs eating up distance at speeds that can exceed 60 miles per hour in short bursts. The void shields flicker and pulse around you, their energy field visible as a faint distortion in the air. Your weapons track smoothly to targets identified by your moderati, the targeting solutions appearing in your mind as naturally as the awareness of where your own hands are positioned. When you fire, you feel the weapons discharge as if you had personally pulled a trigger, the recoil transmitted through the mind impulse unit as a sensation of force and release. Combat in a warhound is fast and brutal. You are constantly moving, using terrain and speed to avoid becoming a stationary target for enemy heavy weapons. The warhound's armor, while substantial by the standards of conventional vehicles, is relatively thin for a Titan. A sustained barrage from enemy super heavy tanks or anti-Titan weapons can bring down your void shields and threaten your hull integrity. This vulnerability keeps you alert and aggressive, pushing you to strike hard and then withdraw before the enemy can concentrate their fire effectively. The machine spirit approves of this aggressive style, flooding your consciousness with something that might be satisfaction when you destroy an enemy target and then fade back into cover before they can retaliate. The Reaver Battle Titan represents a significant step up in both size and capability. Standing approximately 90 feet tall and weighing anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 tons, depending on configuration and armament, a Reaver is built to hold the line and break enemy formations. Where a warhound is a scalpel, designed for precise strikes against specific targets, a Reaver is a hammer meant to smash through enemy defenses through sheer destructive power. The crew of a Reaver consists of a Princeps Seniores and 3 Moderati. The Princeps Seniores is a veteran who has proven their ability to handle the increased mental strain of bonding with a larger, more complex Titan. The additional Moderatus is needed to manage the Reaver's more extensive weapon systems, which typically include a massive dorsal-mounted weapon, like the Apocalypse missile launcher or Volcano cannon, plus 2 carapace weapons, such as a Gatling blaster or laser blaster, and arm-mounted weapons, like the Melter cannon or Power Fist. Bonding with a Reaver is a more intense experience than bonding with a warhound. The machine spirit of a Reaver is typically more patient and deliberate than that of a warhound, reflecting its role as a line breaker rather than a scout. But it is also more powerful, more certain of its superiority over conventional forces. When you connect with a Reaver, you feel that confidence flowing into you, a deep certainty that nothing short of another Titan or concentrated super heavy firepower can truly threaten you. This can be intoxicating and dangerous. The temptation to simply march forward into enemy fire, trusting in your void shields and armor to protect you, is strong. Learning to balance the machine spirit's confidence with tactical caution is one of the primary challenges of serving as Princeps of a Reaver. The sensory experience of piloting a Reaver is more intense than that of a warhound. You are larger, heavier, more powerful. Each step you take causes the ground to shake noticeably, even at a distance. Buildings that might have blocked a warhound's path can be simply walked through, their walls collapsing like paper before your massive legs. Your weapon systems are capable of destroying entire formations with single salvos. When you fire the Apocalypse missile launcher, you feel dozens of missiles streaking away toward their targets, each one capable of reducing a building to rubble. When the Melter cannon discharges, you feel the blast of superheated air as the weapon generates temperatures hot enough to vaporize steel and ceramite. The psychological impact of commanding a Reaver is also more pronounced. The power at your command is sufficient to change the course of entire battles. Armies live or die based on where you choose to deploy, what targets you select. This weight of responsibility, combined with the machine spirit's influence, can be crushing. Many Princeps of Reavers develop a cold, calculating demeanor, viewing war as a problem to be solved through the application of overwhelming firepower. The human cost of their decisions begins to fade into abstraction, enemy casualties becoming mere numbers in damage assessment reports rather than individual lives ended. But the true apex of the Titan experience comes with the Warlord Battle Titan. Standing between 100 and 175 feet tall, and weighing anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 tons depending on configuration, a Warlord is the most common heavy Titan in the Imperium's arsenal. It is large enough to dominate most battlefields, powerful enough to break almost any defensive position, yet not so massive that it becomes impractical to deploy or maintain. The crew of a Warlord consists of a Princeps Seniores and 4 to 6 Moderati, plus dozens of support personnel who manage the Titan's plasma reactor, void shield generators, weapon systems, and other critical functions. These support personnel do not directly interface with the Titan through mind impulse units. Instead, they work at conventional control stations throughout the Titan's body, monitoring systems and making adjustments under the direction of the Princeps and Moderati. Bonding with a Warlord is an experience that can break lesser minds. The sheer scale of the machine, the vast array of systems you must integrate into your consciousness, the power of the machine spirit, all combine to create a mental load that pushes the limits of human neural capacity. The first time you truly bond with a Warlord, assuming you survive the experience, you understand why Princeps Seniores are treated with such reverence within the Adeptus Titanicus. To successfully command a god machine of this magnitude requires not just skill or training, but a fundamental strength of personality that cannot be taught or learned. The machine spirit of a Warlord is typically ancient and powerful, shaped by countless battles and the personalities of dozens or hundreds of previous Princeps. Some Warlords have served for thousands of years, their machine spirits accumulating experiences and memories until they possess a depth of battlefield knowledge that exceeds that of any living human. When you bond with such a machine, you can sometimes sense these accumulated memories, ghost impressions of battles fought long before you were born, echoes of previous Princeps whose personalities have left permanent marks on the machine spirit's consciousness. The sensation of commanding a Warlord in battle is beyond description. You are a colossus, striding across the battlefield, each step covering dozens of feet, your weapons capable of erasing entire enemy formations from existence. The plasma destructors that arm many Warlords fire bolts of superheated plasma hot enough to burn through the armor of super-heavy tanks as if it were paper. The volcano cannon can punch through fortress walls several feet thick. The laser blasters mounted on your carapace can sweep enemy infantry from defensive positions like a man sweeping dust from a table. But with this power comes a heightened version of all the psychological challenges faced by Princeps of smaller Titans. The bleeding is more intense, the erosion of your humanity more rapid and pronounced. The machine spirit of a Warlord is powerful enough to dominate a weak-willed Princeps completely, reducing them to little more than a biological component in the Titan's control systems. Even strong-willed Princeps find themselves changing in fundamental ways, developing the machine's patient ruthlessness, its absolute certainty in the righteousness of destruction, its hunger for battle that can never be truly sated. Many Warlord Princeps report that they begin to feel uncomfortable in their own bodies when disconnected from their Titans for extended periods. The human form feels wrong, too small, too weak, too limited. Simple tasks like walking become strange and difficult, as your brain struggles to readjust to controlling a body measured in feet rather than hundreds of feet. Some Princeps develop a condition known as disconnect syndrome, where they become unable to function normally outside their Titans, spending all their time either bonded with the machine or sedated in medical facilities until their next deployment. And then there are the Emperor Titans, god machines so vast and powerful that they exist in a category entirely separate from other Titans. An Imperator stands anywhere from 140 to 500 feet tall depending on variant and source, weighing tens of thousands of tons. These colossal constructs are not simply war machines. They are mobile fortresses, traveling cathedrals of destruction that house hundreds of crew members and support personnel. The Princeps of an Imperator, always a Princeps Maximus or Princeps Seniores of the highest rank and experience, faces challenges that are qualitatively different from those of Princeps commanding smaller Titans. The machine spirit of an Imperator is so vast and ancient that bonding with it is less like interfacing with a machine and more like touching the mind of a god. Many Imperator machine spirits have personalities so well defined that they are treated as individuals by their crews, given names and honored in specific ways, their preferences and quirks carefully catalogued and accommodated. The crew of an Imperator is itself a complex organization. Beyond the princeps and moderati who form the core command structure, there are tech priests who maintain the plasma reactors and void shield generators, weapons crews who load and fire the massive ordnance, communications specialists who coordinate with other Imperial forces, and sometimes even detachments of Imperial Guard soldiers who defend the Titan against boarding actions or deploy from it to secure objectives. Commanding such a complex organization, while simultaneously maintaining your bond with the machine spirit, requires abilities that border on the superhuman. The sensation of commanding an Imperator in battle is said to be overwhelming even for experienced princeps. You are not simply piloting a large mech. You are embodying a walking city, a mobile strongpoint that can single-handedly turn the tide of planetary invasions. The weapons at your command are apocalyptic in their destructive potential. The Hellstorm cannon can reduce entire city blocks to rubble in seconds. The Plasma Annihilator creates explosions visible from orbit. Some Imperators mount close combat weapons, like the massive Power Claw, energy-wreathed fists large enough to grasp enemy titans and tear them apart in brutal melee combat. But perhaps the most significant aspect of commanding an Imperator is the weight of history you carry. Many Imperators are ancient even by the standards of the Imperium, dating back to the Great Crusade or even earlier. They have walked across hundreds of battlefields, participated in wars that shaped the fate of entire sectors. Their machine spirits remember heroes whose names are legend, battles that are studied in the Collegia Titanica as examples of tactical perfection. To bond with such a machine is to become part of that legacy, to add your own experiences to the vast accumulated knowledge of the God Machine. Now we must examine the broader structure of how Titans are operated, the complex interplay between princeps and moderati that allows these God Machines to function effectively in combat. The relationship between a princeps and their moderati is more intimate than most people outside the Adeptus Titanicus realize. Through the Mind Impulse unit, their consciousnesses are partially merged, creating a gestalt entity that combines the strengths and perspectives of multiple individuals. The moderati are not simply subordinates following orders. They are partners in the truest sense. Their minds linked so closely with the princeps and the Titan that they share sensations, emotions, and thoughts to a degree that can be disturbing for those not accustomed to it. When a moderatus targets a weapon system, the princeps feels it as if they were doing the targeting themselves. When the princeps maneuvers the Titan, the moderati experience the sensation of movement as if their own bodies were in motion. This constant sharing of experience creates bonds between crew members that are stronger than family ties, deeper than friendship, more intense than any relationship possible between individuals who do not share portions of their consciousness. The selection of moderati for a Titan crew is taken very seriously. Beyond the basic neural compatibility required to interface with the Mind Impulse unit, potential moderati must be psychologically compatible with their princeps and with each other. A crew whose members have conflicting personalities or incompatible thought patterns will struggle to maintain the gestalt consciousness necessary for effective Titan operation. In the worst cases, such incompatibilities can lead to feedback loops in the Mind Impulse unit, causing pain, disorientation, or even neural damage to all connected crew members. Most moderati begin their service with aspirations of eventually becoming princeps themselves. The role of moderatus is seen as training and proving ground, a way to gain experience with Titan operations, while developing the strength of will and mental flexibility necessary to command a God Machine. But the reality is that most moderati will never advance to princeps. The qualities that make a good moderatus, steady reliability, willingness to follow direction, ability to focus intensely on specific subsystems, are not necessarily the same qualities that make a good princeps. A princeps must be able to see the bigger picture, to make split-second decisions that affect not just the Titan, but entire battle spaces, to dominate the machine spirit while still working with their crew. Many excellent moderati simply lack the aggressive independence of thought necessary for the role of princeps. This can create tensions within crews. A moderatus who has served for decades, who knows every quirk and capability of their titan as well as, or better than their princeps, may feel frustrated at being passed over for promotion repeatedly. But such frustrations must be carefully managed, because discord within a crew can compromise the effectiveness of the entire titan. The Gestalt consciousness created by the mind impulse unit amplifies emotions as well as thoughts. If one crew member is angry or resentful, those feelings bleed into the consciousness of their fellow crew members, potentially disrupting the careful balance necessary for effective operation. The relationship between a Titan crew and their machine spirit adds another layer of complexity to these dynamics. The machine spirit is not a passive component that simply accepts direction from its crew. It is an active participant in the Gestalt consciousness, contributing its own personality, preferences, and at times, its own agenda. A machine spirit that favors aggressive action may push its crew toward more risky maneuvers. A machine spirit that has developed a particular hatred for a specific type of enemy, perhaps due to traumatic past engagements, may fixate on those enemies, even when tactical considerations suggest other targets would be more appropriate. Managing the machine spirit's influence while maintaining crew cohesion and executing tactical objectives requires a delicate touch. The princeps must be strong enough to override the machine spirit when necessary, but wise enough to work with it rather than against it when possible. A princeps who fights their machine spirit on every decision will exhaust themselves and create unnecessary stress for their crew. But a princeps who gives the machine spirit too much freedom risks losing control entirely, becoming a passenger in their own titan as the ancient intelligence pursues its own goals. This balance is further complicated by the fact that the machine spirit's power and influence grow over time, fed by each battle, each kill, each triumph. A newly awakened titan with a relatively quiescent machine spirit may be easy to control, responding to its princeps' direction with minimal resistance. But after decades or centuries of warfare, that same machine spirit may have grown so powerful and self-assured that it takes constant effort to maintain any semblance of human control. The most ancient titans, those that have served for thousands of years, sometimes possess machine spirits so dominant that they effectively choose their own princeps, accepting or rejecting candidates based on criteria only they understand. The hunger of the machine spirit is perhaps its most challenging aspect for crews to manage. Titans are war machines, built for destruction, and their machine spirits reflect that purpose. They hunger for battle with an intensity that can be overwhelming. A titan that has been inactive for extended periods, kept in storage in the titan hangar while waiting for deployment, develops what tech priests call reactive imbalance. The machine spirit becomes restless and aggressive, sometimes lashing out at maintenance crews or resisting routine diagnostic procedures. When such a titan is finally deployed, it often goes into battle with a ferocity that borders on uncontrollable, the pent-up hunger of its machine spirit, driving it to seek out enemies with single-minded intensity. This hunger affects the crew as well. Through the mind impulse unit connection, the crew feels the machine spirit's desire for combat bleeding into their own consciousness. Princeps and moderati who have been disconnected from their titan for too long often report feeling incomplete, as if a part of themselves is missing. They become irritable and restless, unable to focus on normal activities. Some develop a condition informally known as the shakes, a combination of physical tremors and mental disquiet that can only be relieved by reconnecting with their titan. In severe cases, princeps may become so dependent on the connection that they suffer complete psychological breakdown when separated from their god machine for extended periods. The Adeptus Titanicus recognizes these issues and attempts to manage them through regular rotation schedules, ensuring that crews get adequate rest periods between deployments, while also making sure titans are activated frequently enough to keep their machine spirits from becoming too restless. But the constant warfare of the 41st millennium often disrupts these carefully planned schedules. Titan legions may be deployed for years at a time in major campaigns, their crews going weeks or months without disconnecting from their god machines. Or conversely, a legion may be left in reserve for extended periods, while other Imperial forces handle less severe threats, their Titans growing increasingly unstable as their machine spirit's hunger for battle goes unfed. Let us now turn to the experience of actual combat, what it truly feels like when a Titan goes to war. The preparation for battle begins long before the Titan actually engages the enemy. Tech priests perform elaborate rituals of activation, burning incense, and chanting prayers to the Omnissiah as they bring the Titan's systems online. Each system requires its own specific litany, its own series of sanctified procedures that must be followed exactly. The plasma reactor must be awakened with the proper benedictions. The void shield generators must be activated in the correct sequence. The weapon systems must be blessed and made ready according to ancient protocols that are part engineering procedure and part religious ceremony. As these rituals proceed, the princeps and moderati take their places in the command throne and begin their own preparation. They review tactical briefings, study terrain maps, confirm communication protocols with other elements of the battle group, but more importantly, they begin the mental disciplines that will allow them to effectively bond with the Titan. Meditation techniques passed down through generations of princeps help them achieve the proper state of mind, clearing away distractions and strengthening their sense of self in preparation for the merging with the machine spirit. Then comes the moment of connection. The mind impulse unit activates, and consciousness begins to expand. You feel yourself flowing into the Titan's systems, your awareness spreading through circuits and conduits. The machine spirit stirs, sensing your presence, and you feel its hunger rising to meet you. This is the critical moment. If you are not properly centered, if your will is not strong enough, the machine spirit may overwhelm you before you have established proper control. But if you are ready, if you have properly prepared yourself, you meet that hunger with your own strength, establishing the partnership that will allow both human and machine to function as one. As the bond solidifies, sensory input begins flooding into your consciousness. The Titan's Auspex arrays, comparable to a combination of radar, sonar, and other detection systems, feed you information about the surrounding environment. Heat signatures appear as glowing shapes in your mind. Metal returns sharp, clear echoes. Movement is highlighted automatically by the Titan's logic engines. All of this information integrates into a comprehensive picture of the battlefield that is far more detailed than anything you could perceive with merely human senses. Your Moderati report their systems ready, their voices coming through the Vox network, and simultaneously appearing as thoughts in the Gestalt consciousness you share. The weapons are online, targeting solutions being calculated continuously as the logic engines identify potential threats and prioritize them according to pre-programmed criteria. The void shields are at full strength, their protective energy fields surrounding the Titan in an invisible barrier that will absorb incredible amounts of punishment before failing. The reactor is running smoothly, generating enough power to supply a small city. You are ready for war. The first steps are always significant. The moment when a Titan begins to move, when thousands of tons of blessed steel and ceramite respond to your thought and start walking, that moment never loses its impact, no matter how many times you experience it. The ground trembles beneath your feet. Lesser vehicles and infantry nearby are forced to move aside or be crushed under your massive tread. You stride forward with purpose, each step covering what seems like vast distances, the perspective from your elevated position, making normal-sized vehicles and soldiers appear tiny and insignificant. As you approach the battlefield, your Auspex begins detecting enemy forces. The logic engines tag targets automatically, prioritizing them based on threat level. Enemy armor shows up as bright red signatures. Concentrations of infantry are marked in amber. Hardened defensive positions are highlighted in orange. Your Moderati begin calling out specific targets, requesting permission to engage. But you hold fire. Not yet. Not until you are in optimal position. Not until the enemy has fully revealed themselves. Patience is a virtue, even for a god of war. Then contact is made. The enemy, seeing a Titan advancing toward them, opens fire. Las fire and stubber rounds, pathetically inadequate to threaten your void shields, spark harmlessly against the energy barrier surrounding you. Heavier weapons, anti-tank missiles and autocannons make the void shields flicker and pulse as they absorb the kinetic energy. But hold firm. The sensation is strange, like feeling rain on your skin, present but not threatening. Your machine spirit's hunger spikes, demanding you return fire. Destroy these insects that dare to attack you. But still, you wait, gathering more data, ensuring you have identified the most valuable targets. There, enemy armor, a formation of battle tanks taking up positions behind defensive berms. These are real threats, vehicles whose main guns could potentially bring down your void shields with sustained fire. You designate them as priority targets and give the order. Your Moderati respond instantly, their minds already aligned with yours. Their targeting solutions calculated and ready. The plasma blast gun, Vulcan megabolter, and missile launcher that arm your Warhound speak as one, a symphony of destruction that reaches out across the battlefield. The sensation of firing is unique to each weapon system. The plasma blast gun produces a feeling of intense heat as it launches a bolt of superheated plasma toward the target. You watch through your auspex as the bolt streaks across the distance in less than a second, then impacts the lead enemy tank with catastrophic results. The plasma burns through the tank's armor as if it were paper, the intense heat causing the ammunition inside to detonate. The tank explodes, its turret flying dozens of feet into the air as secondary explosions consume the vehicle. The Vulcan megabolter delivers a different sensation, a rapid-fire staccato of recoil as hundreds of mass-reactive rounds per minute streak toward the enemy formation. Each round is the size of a child's fist, filled with explosive that detonates after penetrating armor. You feel each shot fire, the steady rhythm of the weapon system, and watch as the bolts tear through enemy tanks like a saw through wood. Armor that might stop conventional anti-tank weapons is shredded by the sheer volume of fire, internal components exposed and destroyed. The missile launcher adds its own contribution, dozens of missiles arcing high before plunging down onto the enemy formation from above. The impacts create a pattern of explosions that blankets the area, destroying or crippling every vehicle caught in the bombardment. In less than 10 seconds, an entire enemy armor column has been reduced to burning wreckage. The machine spirit floods you with satisfaction. At the destruction, its hunger temporarily sated, you feel its pleasure as if it were your own, and part of you, the part that is becoming more machine than human, shares that pleasure. But the disciplined princeps in you reminds yourself that the job is not done. There are more enemies on the battlefield, more threats to be eliminated. You stride forward, your auspex already identifying the next target. As you advance deeper into the enemy positions, the level of opposition increases. Artillery begins to fall around you, heavy shells creating massive explosions that would pulverize normal vehicles, but merely make your void shields flare brightly as they absorb the energy. The void shield's power level begins to drop as it absorbs hit after hit, the percentage displayed on your consciousness like a second sense. 75%, 60%, 50%. The shield is still holding, but sustained fire like this will eventually bring it down. You increase your pace, moving faster to make yourself a harder target. The sensation is exhilarating, this massive machine responding to your thoughts with surprising speed. You are not as fast as a warhound, but you are moving at perhaps 30 miles per hour, faster than most people could run, incredibly fast for something weighing thousands of tons. The ground blurs beneath you as you close with the enemy artillery positions. Then you see it. Another Titan, an enemy god machine roughly equivalent to your own warlord, its armor painted in the colors of a traitor legion. Its weapons are already tracking toward you, its own machine spirit no doubt flooding its princeps with the same battle hunger you feel from your own Titan. This is no longer a hunt. This is a duel between equals, God against God, and only one will walk away. The sensation changes immediately. Where before you felt confident, almost casual in your dominance over conventional forces. Now you feel the sharp edge of danger. That Titan can kill you. Its weapons are designed to penetrate Titangent-grade armor. Its machine spirit is just as hungry for destruction as your own. This will be a real fight. You and your opposite number open fire simultaneously. The space between you is filled with energy blasts, projectiles, and missiles as both Titans unleash their full arsenals. Your void shields flare brilliant blue-white as they absorb hit after hit, the power level dropping rapidly. 30%, 20%, 10%. The shield fails with a sensation like a physical shock, the protective energy barrier collapsing. Now your armor is all that stands between you and destruction. But your own fire is having its effect. You watch with grim satisfaction as the enemy Titan's void shields also fail, explosions beginning to scar its armor plating. One of your moderati achieves a particularly good hit, a plasma bolt that punches through damaged armor and detonates somewhere inside the enemy Titan. You feel the enemy machine stagger, its movements becoming less coordinated. It is wounded, vulnerable. You press the attack. Your Titan surges forward, closing the distance in massive strides. This will be decided in close combat, Titan against Titan, in the most brutal form of warfare imaginable. Your power fist, a massive weapon wreathed in energy fields, rises to strike. The enemy Titan attempts to bring its own close combat weapon to bear, but it is too slow, damaged by your previous hits. Your fist connects with tremendous force, the impact transmitted through your consciousness like the satisfaction of a perfect punch. The power fist tears through the enemy Titan's armor, crushing internal components and structure. You feel the machine spirit of your Titan roaring in triumph, demanding you finish the kill. You strike again and again, each blow causing more devastation, until finally the enemy Titan falls. Its reactor goes critical, the resulting explosion destroying what remains of the God Machine and creating a mushroom cloud visible for miles. There is no time to savor the victory. Your Auspex is already showing more enemy forces converging on your position. Your void shields are down and will take precious minutes to recharge. Your armor has taken significant damage, several systems showing amber or red status on your consciousness. But you are still functional, still dangerous, still a god of war striding across the battlefield. You turn toward the new threats, your weapons cycling to new targets, and prepare to continue the battle. This is what it means to fight as a Titan. The constant stream of targets, the rapid cycling between dominating inferior foes and desperate struggles against equals, the sensation of power and vulnerability existing simultaneously, the merging of human tactical thinking with the machine spirit's hunger for destruction. Hours pass like minutes, the battle becoming a blur of targeting solutions, weapon discharges, and evasive maneuvers. You lose track of how many enemies you have destroyed, how much ground you have covered. All that matters is the next target, the next threat, the next kill. And through it all, the machine spirit is there, its consciousness intertwined with yours, feeding you its battle lust and drawing strength from your tactical acumen. You are no longer truly separate entities. You are a merged being, part human, part machine, greater than either component alone, but also something that neither fully controls. This is the ultimate expression of the bond between Princeps and Titan, the moment when the boundaries between flesh and steel blur into irrelevance. But every battle must end. Eventually, either the enemy is defeated or your forces withdraw. If you are fortunate enough to survive, you stride back to your deployment zone, your Titan's armor scarred and scorched, systems damaged but functional. Tech priests swarm over the God Machine as soon as you halt, beginning the long process of repairs and maintenance. And you, exhausted beyond measure, begin the process of disconnection. This is perhaps the most difficult moment for many Princeps. After hours or days of being a god, of wielding power beyond mortal comprehension, you must return to being merely human. The mind impulse unit deactivates, and your consciousness begins to contract, pulling back from the vast expanse of the Titan's systems and flowing back into the confines of your skull. The sensation is deeply unpleasant, like being forced back into a cage that has become far too small. You feel diminished, weak, trapped in flesh that seems pathetically fragile compared to the armored might you commanded moments ago. The machine spirit resists your departure. It does not want to return to dormancy, does not want to lose the connection that gives it purpose and direction. You feel its reluctance as a kind of pulling sensation, as if something is trying to keep you from fully disconnecting. Breaking free requires effort, a conscious exertion of will to sever the bond. When the connection finally breaks, you often feel a moment of disorientation, of loss, as if a part of you has been amputated. Then you are back in your own body, just a person sitting in a throne surrounded by cables and machinery. The contrast is jarring. Where moments ago you perceived a battlefield spanning miles, now you see only the cramped interior of the Titan's head. Where moments ago you commanded weapons capable of leveling cities, now you struggle to coordinate limbs that feel foreign and difficult to control. Many princeps need assistance to stand after disconnection, their bodies weakened by the physical strain of maintaining the Miyu link, and their brains struggling to readjust to baseline human consciousness. The psychological toll of Titan warfare extends far beyond the immediate aftermath of battle. Every deployment, every connection with the machine spirit, every moment spent, merged with the god machine, leaves its mark on your psyche. The bleeding we discussed earlier is a constant process, accelerated by combat stress and the intensity of the bond during battle. You find yourself thinking more and more like the machine, viewing problems through the lens of targeting solutions and optimal force application. Emotional connections to other people become harder to maintain as you spend more time bonded with consciousness that does not understand or value such connections. The changes begin subtly. You might find yourself calculating the structural integrity of buildings you pass, automatically identifying firing positions and defensive strong points. Conversations with normal people become frustrating as you struggle to understand concerns that seem trivial compared to the life and death decisions you make while bonded with your Titan. You begin to see people not as individuals, but as units, assets that can be deployed or obstacles that must be overcome. This cold, calculating perspective seeps into every aspect of your life until even close personal relationships become difficult to maintain. Your sense of physical scale becomes distorted. After spending hours or days perceiving the world from hundreds of feet in the air, returning to normal human height feels wrong, constraining, almost claustrophobic. Some princeps develop a psychological condition where they cannot comfortably enter enclosed spaces, their minds rebelling against the confinement after the vast spaces they perceive while bonded with their Titans. Others have the opposite problem, becoming disoriented in open areas where they cannot feel walls around them, their brains expecting the solid presence of a Titan's armored hull. Sleep becomes difficult for many princeps. When you close your eyes, you do not see the darkness of normal dreams. You see targeting reticles and damage readouts. You hear the thunder of weapons fire and the screaming of dying enemies. The machine spirit's hunger echoes in your mind even when you are disconnected, a constant pressure pushing you toward the next battle, the next deployment, the next merging. Some princeps develop severe insomnia, going days or weeks without meaningful rest, sustained only by stimulants and the desperate need to avoid the dreams that come when they do sleep. The dreams, when they come, are often disturbing. You might dream that you are the Titan, striding across battlefields without any crew or princeps to guide you, your weapons firing at targets you cannot see, your footsteps crushing people whose screams you can hear but cannot stop to help. Or you dream that you are trapped inside the Titan, unable to disconnect, watching helplessly as the machine spirit takes full control and goes on a rampage of destruction that you cannot prevent. Some princeps report dreams where they have physically merged with their Titans, their bodies becoming part of the machine's structure, metal growing through their flesh until they cannot tell where they end and the Titan begins. These dreams are not simply random firing of neurons, but reflections of a fundamental transformation occurring in your consciousness. The mind impulse unit creates artificial neural pathways, new connections in your brain that allow you to process information at Titan scale. These pathways do not simply disappear when you disconnect. They remain active, constantly processing sensory input, even when you are not bonded with the God machine. Your brain is literally being rewired, transformed into something that is neither fully human nor fully machine, but a hybrid consciousness that can function in both states, but truly belongs to neither. The physical effects of long-term MIU use are equally severe. The neural interface points implanted in your skull are sites of constant low-level inflammation, the body's immune system trying unsuccessfully to reject the foreign material embedded in your flesh. This can lead to chronic headaches, localized infections, and in severe cases, abscess formation that requires surgical intervention. The electromagnetic fields generated by the MIU during bonding can cause cellular damage to nearby brain tissue, leading to seizures, memory problems, and other neurological symptoms. Some princeps develop a condition called neural feedback syndrome, where the artificial pathways created by the MIU begin to malfunction, sending random signals that the brain interprets as sensory input from the Titan. A princeps suffering from neural feedback syndrome might suddenly feel as if their arm has been replaced by a plasma cannon, experiencing phantom sensations of heat and recoil, even though they are not bonded with their god machine. Or they might perceive themselves as being hundreds of feet tall, their normal body feeling impossibly small and wrong. In severe cases, neural feedback syndrome can cause complete dissociation from reality, the princeps becoming unable to distinguish between their actual physical state and the phantom sensations generated by malfunctioning neural pathways. The psychological support systems available to princeps are limited and often inadequate. The Adeptus Titanicus employs chaplains and mental health specialists who understand the unique challenges of Titan warfare, but these individuals are often overworked and unable to provide the level of care that truly damaged princeps require. Regular psychological evaluations are mandatory, but these are primarily concerned with determining whether a princeps remains fit for duty rather than actually treating their psychological problems. A princeps showing signs of severe bleeding might be given some time off duty to recover, but if the Titan Legion is engaged in active operations, that time is often cut short by the need to deploy every available god machine. Relationships with people outside the Adeptus Titanicus become nearly impossible to maintain. How can you explain to someone who has never bonded with a Titan what it feels like? How can you make them understand the hunger, the power, the terrible intimacy of merging your consciousness with an ancient machine intelligence? The gulf between your experience and theirs is too vast to bridge with words. Even relationships with other princeps can be strained, because each Titan has its own unique machine spirit, its own personality, and demands. What works for one princeps may be completely inappropriate for another. Family relationships suffer particularly badly. Parents, siblings, or children who do not understand what you have become often react with fear or incomprehension when confronted with the changes in your personality. The person you were before your first bonding is gone, replaced by someone who thinks differently, feels differently, exists in a state of constant tension between human and machine consciousness. Some princeps maintain superficial contact with family members, but true emotional connection becomes impossible. Others simply cut off all contact, finding it easier to live solely within the community of the Adeptus Titanicus than to maintain the pretense of normal family relationships. Romantic relationships are even more challenging. The intense bond formed with your crew through the mind impulse unit often makes relationships with people outside that bond feel shallow and meaningless. How can a normal romantic partnership compare to the absolute intimacy of sharing someone's consciousness during battle? Some princeps form romantic relationships with their moderati, the only people who truly understand what they experience. But such relationships are complicated by the power dynamics inherent in the crew hierarchy and the fact that your minds are partially merged during every deployment, making it difficult to maintain appropriate boundaries. The only people who truly understand are your crew, the moderati who share the bond with you, and the machine spirit. These relationships become everything, stronger than marriage, deeper than family. You know your moderati's thoughts because you have shared their consciousness. You understand their fears and hopes because you have felt them directly through the MIU link. When a moderatus dies, whether in battle or from the long-term effects of bleeding, the loss is devastating. It is like losing a part of yourself, a piece of your own consciousness torn away and left forever empty. Many princeps report that the death of a crew member is more traumatic than the death of family members, because the crew member was part of their extended consciousness in a way that family never could be. The gap left by a dead moderatus must eventually be filled by a new crew member. But the integration process is difficult and painful. The new moderatus brings their own consciousness, their own patterns of thought, their own way of perceiving the world. Merging this new consciousness with the existing gestalt created by the princeps and remaining moderati requires time and effort, and the final result is always different from what existed before. The crew that emerges from this process is changed, transformed by the addition of a new element and the absence of the old one. Some princeps develop what could be called addiction to the power and sensations of bonding with their titan. The feeling of being a god, of wielding power beyond mortal comprehension, becomes so intoxicating that normal life feels grey and meaningless by comparison. These princeps push to be deployed as frequently as possible, volunteer for dangerous missions, do anything to experience that rush of merging with the machine spirit one more time. This addiction is recognized by the Adeptus Titanicus as a form of psychological damage, but it is rarely treated because princeps displaying this behavior are often highly effective in combat, their desire for deployment translating into aggressive, decisive action on the battlefield. The Adeptus Titanicus attempts to manage these psychological challenges through various programs and support systems. Regular psychological evaluations, counseling services, and enforced rest periods between deployments are all part of the standard protocol. But the truth is that once you have bonded with a titan, once you have experienced the power and the hunger and the terrible intimacy of that connection, you are forever changed. There is no going back to being a normal human. The best you can hope for is to maintain enough of your original personality to function effectively, to avoid becoming so merged with the machine that you lose all sense of individual identity. The question of retirement is a difficult one for the Adeptus Titanicus. In theory, princeps can retire from active service after a certain number of years or deployments, their experience and expertise put to use training new generations of Titan commanders. In practice, few princeps survive long enough to retire, and fewer still are psychologically capable of giving up the bond with their Titan. The bleeding process often progresses to the point where the princeps cannot function without regular connection to their god machine. Attempting to force such a princeps into retirement may result in complete psychological breakdown or even death. So, most princeps continue serving until they die, either in battle or from the accumulated damage of years of Miyu connection. Some develop seizures or other neurological problems as the artificial neural pathways created by the Miyu begin to degrade. Others simply burn out, their minds consumed by the machine spirit until they become catatonic, unable to function, either as princeps or as independent human beings. A few, the fortunate few, die quickly in battle, their titans destroyed by enemy fire before they can experience the slow decline that awaits those who serve too long. Now we must examine the broader culture of the Titan legions, the organizations that deploy and maintain these god machines. Each Titan legion has its own history, traditions, and culture, shaped by thousands of years of warfare and the personalities of the Titans they maintain. The most famous of these is Legio Ignatum, the Fire Wasps, one of the oldest and most honored legions in the Imperium. Based on Mars itself, Legio Ignatum has participated in countless campaigns dating back to the Great Crusade. Their titans are painted in distinctive orange and black livery, the colors chosen to honor the volcanic forges of Mars, where many of their god machines were constructed. The Fire Wasps are known for aggressive tactics, preferring to close with the enemy quickly and destroy them with overwhelming firepower rather than engaging in protracted battles of maneuver. The culture within Legio Ignatum emphasizes honor through action and glory through victory. Their princeps are taught from their earliest training that hesitation is weakness and that the emperor favors those who strike boldly. This aggressive doctrine has served them well in many campaigns, allowing them to break enemy lines and destroy opposition before the enemy can organize effective resistance. But it has also led to higher casualty rates than more conservative legions. As Fire Wasp Titans sometimes advance too far ahead of supporting forces or engage in battles where tactical withdrawal might have been the wiser choice. The Legion accepts these losses as the price of their aggressive doctrine, honoring their fallen as heroes who died as princeps should, in glorious combat, rather than in beds of old age. Legio Ignatum maintains particularly close ties with several Space Marine chapters, having fought alongside them in numerous campaigns. This relationship has shaped their tactical doctrine, making them more willing than many legions to coordinate closely with ground forces and provide direct fire support for Space Marine operations. Fire Wasp Princeps take pride in their ability to advance through terrain that would stop other Titans, using their God Machine's size and power to create opportunities for Space Marines to exploit. This close coordination requires excellent communication between Titan crews and ground forces, something that Legio Ignatum has honed into an art form over millennia of joint operations. Legio Mortis, the Death's Heads, is another ancient and prestigious legion, though their history is complicated by the fact that much of the legion turned traitor during the Horus Heresy. The loyalist remnants of Legio Mortis continue to serve the Imperium, their Titans painted in black and white livery, their princeps driven by a desire to redeem their legion's honor through exemplary service. The weight of their legion's betrayal hangs heavy on every member, a constant reminder that even the mightiest can fall if their faith wavers. Death's Head Princeps are known for being grimly determined and absolutely fanatical in their loyalty to the Imperium, as if trying to prove through their actions that the traitor Death's Heads do not represent the true spirit of the Legion. The culture within Legio Mortis is marked by constant vigilance against corruption and an almost obsessive attention to ritual and protocol. Death's Head Princeps spend more time in prayer and meditation than those of other legions, seeking to purify their thoughts and strengthen their resistance to the temptations that led their predecessors to betray the Emperor. The Legion maintains extensive records of the heresy, including detailed accounts of how and why particular Titans fell to chaos. These records are studied by all Death's Head personnel, not from morbid fascination, but as cautionary tales, reminders of what happens when vigilance falters and faith weakens. Legio Mortis, Titans are often deployed in the most desperate situations, their commanders willing to accept missions that other legions might refuse as too risky. This willingness to take on dangerous assignments has earned them respect throughout the Imperium, but it also results in high casualty rates. The Legion views these losses as necessary sacrifices, payment on the debt incurred by their traitor brothers 10,000 years ago. Some within the Adeptus Titanicus question whether this mindset is healthy, whether the constant drive to prove their loyalty might actually be counterproductive, pushing princeps to take unnecessary risks that waste valuable assets. But the Death's Heads refuse to change their approach, believing that only through constant sacrifice can they ever hope to truly redeem their legion's honor. Legio Griffonicus, the War Griffins, are known for their defensive doctrine and stubborn refusal to yield ground. Their Titans often serve as anchors for Imperial defensive lines, their princeps trained to hold position against overwhelming odds while other forces maneuver around them. The War Griffins have earned a reputation for reliability and steadfastness that makes them highly valued by Imperial commanders planning defensive campaigns. Their Titans are painted in yellow and red livery, colors that speak to both their Martian heritage and their role as bastions that enemies break themselves against. The culture within Legio Griffonicus emphasizes patience, discipline, and absolute commitment to holding assigned positions. War Griffin princeps are taught that retreating without orders is the greatest shame a Titan commander can know, that a god machine that yields ground has failed in its fundamental purpose. This makes them incredibly effective in defensive battles, where their willingness to endure tremendous punishment while maintaining their positions can turn the tide of entire campaigns. But it also creates challenges in offensive operations, where the Legion's natural inclination is to advance to a strong position and then hold it, rather than continuing to press forward aggressively. Legio Griffonicus has developed extensive expertise in coordinating with fixed defensive installations, understanding how to position their Titans to maximize the effectiveness of fortress guns, minefields, and other defensive measures. Their princeps study siege warfare and defensive tactics, with the same intensity that other legions devote to offensive maneuvers. This specialized knowledge makes them the legion of choice for critical defensive operations, planetary sieges, where the Imperium must hold ground at all costs, and battles where losing even a single strategic position could result in catastrophic defeat. Legio Atarus, the Firebrands, represents a different approach to Titan warfare entirely. Based on the forge world of Mars Secundus, the Firebrands are known for their emphasis on speed and maneuver rather than raw firepower. Their Titan complements favor Warhounds and Reavers over the heavier Warlords, and their tactical doctrine emphasizes flanking attacks, rapid redeployment, and exploiting enemy weaknesses rather than grinding through enemy strength. Firebrand Titans are painted in red and black livery, and their princeps are selected for quick thinking and decisive action rather than methodical planning. The culture within Legio Atarus is less formal and more individualistic than many other legions. Firebrand princeps are encouraged to show initiative and adapt to changing battlefield conditions, rather than rigidly following predetermined battle plans. This flexibility makes them excellent at responding to unexpected situations and exploiting opportunities that more doctrinaire legions might miss. But it also means that Firebrand operations can sometimes lack the coordination and unified purpose that comes from more centralized command structures. The Legion accepts this trade-off, believing that the benefits of adaptability outweigh the costs of occasional confusion. Legio Astorum, the Warp Runners, specialize in rapid deployment operations, using their expertise in coordinating with the Imperial Navy to quickly transport their Titans to crisis points across the Imperium. Their name comes from their willingness to risk warp travel more frequently than other legions, accepting the dangers of the Immerterium in exchange for the ability to respond to threats that might otherwise go unopposed until it is too late. Warp Runner Titans are painted in blue and white livery, colors chosen to honor the void of space through which they travel so frequently. The culture within Legio Astorum emphasizes versatility and readiness. Warp Runner princeps train to fight in a wider variety of environments than those of other legions, from frozen ice worlds to scorching desert planets, from dense urban environments to open plains. They pride themselves on being able to deploy anywhere at any time and engage any enemy under any conditions. This versatility comes at a cost. The constant redeployment means that Warp Runner Titans spend less time receiving maintenance and repairs than those of legions that remain stationed in particular sectors for extended periods. Their god machines tend to accumulate wear and minor damage that might be addressed if there were more time between deployments, but which instead becomes chronic problems that must be worked around rather than fixed. Legio Crucius, the Warmongers, earned their name through millennia of aggressive offensive operations. Their Titans are painted in green and white livery, and their princeps are selected for their hunger for battle and willingness to engage any enemy regardless of odds. The Warmongers have a well-deserved reputation for being difficult to control, their commanders often having to restrain their princeps from launching attacks before proper coordination with supporting forces has been established. But when the situation calls for overwhelming aggression, when the Imperium needs an enemy crushed without concern for losses or collateral damage, Legio Crucius is often the first choice. The culture within the Legion emphasizes personal glory and the accumulation of kill tallies. Warmonger princeps compete intensely with each other, measuring their worth by the number and quality of enemies destroyed. This competitive environment pushes them to seek out the most dangerous opponents and engage in the most challenging battles, which contributes to both their effectiveness and their high casualty rate. The Legion maintains extensive records of every confirmed kill achieved by each of their Titans, and princeps, who achieve particularly impressive tallies, are honored with ceremonies and the right to bear special markings on their god machines. Each legion develops its own culture around the unique demands of Titan warfare. Some emphasize aggressive advance and overwhelming firepower. Their princeps train to strike hard and fast, accepting higher risks in exchange for maximum impact. Others favor more methodical approaches, carefully managing their Titan's deployment to minimize damage while maximizing effectiveness over extended campaigns. Still others specialize in specific types of warfare, urban combat, void operations, or anti-Titan tactics. their training and doctrine focused on excelling in particular operational environments. But beyond these tactical differences, all Titan legions share certain common elements of culture. The bond between princeps and their god machines is sacred, treated with religious reverence by legion members. Tech priests who maintain the Titans are honored as keepers of sacred relics, their work viewed as a form of worship as much as engineering. The machine spirits of the Titans are treated as honored ancestors, personalities to be respected and accommodated, rather than mere automated systems. This religious dimension to Titan operation permeates every aspect of Legion culture, from the rituals of activation to the ceremonies honoring fallen Titans and their crews. The hierarchy within Titan legions is based on a combination of rank, experience, and the strength of one's bond with their assigned Titan. A princeps who commands an ancient, powerful Titan may hold more influence than one who holds technically higher rank, but commands a newer, less proven, god machine. This can create complex political dynamics as princeps maneuver for assignments to prestigious Titans or lobby for their current god machine to receive priority for repairs and upgrades. The most skilled commanders understand how to navigate these politics while maintaining focus on their primary mission of serving the Emperor. The relationship between Titan legions and the Adeptus Mechanicus, the machine cult of Mars, is fundamental to the legion's identity. While Titan legions maintain their own command structures and operational independence, they are ultimately subordinate to the Mechanicus and rely on the tech priests for the maintenance and care of their god machines. This creates a complex political situation where princeps must balance their military judgment with the religious beliefs and political interests of the Mechanicus. Senior princeps often develop close working relationships with high-ranking tech priests, understanding that cooperation and mutual respect are essential for maintaining an effective fighting force. The Titan legions also maintain traditions of rivalry and competition with each other, dating back thousands of years to campaigns where different legions served together and competed for glory. These rivalries are generally friendly, manifesting in ceremonial competitions, boasts about which legion has the more impressive combat record, and good-natured mockery of each other's tactical doctrines. But they can also create real tensions, particularly when legions with different operational philosophies are forced to work together in joint operations. A legion that favors aggressive advance may clash with one that prefers methodical progress, each viewing the other's approach as either reckless or cowardly depending on perspective. The relationship between Titan legions and other Imperial forces is complex. On one hand, the presence of even a single Titan can transform the strategic situation on a battlefield, providing firepower and shock value that few other assets can match. Imperial commanders eagerly request Titan support for critical operations, knowing that god machines can break defensive positions that would otherwise require weeks of grinding conventional warfare to overcome. On the other hand, Titans are incredibly rare and valuable assets. There are perhaps a few thousand operational Titans in the entire Imperium, spread across hundreds of legions and thousands of battlefronts. The loss of a single Titan is a catastrophe that diminishes the Imperium's military strength in ways that cannot easily be replaced. This makes Titan legions extremely cautious about how and when they deploy their god machines, sometimes creating friction with other Imperial forces, who may not understand why the legions will not commit their Titans to what seem like critical battles. The training process for becoming a princeps is long, grueling, and has a high failure rate. Candidates, often selected from among the most promising adepts of the Mechanicus or from families with histories of service in the Titan legions, begin their education in their early teens. The first years are devoted to academic learning, mathematics, physics, engineering, military history, and tactical theory. Students learn the principles by which Titans operate, studying reactor mechanics, weapons systems, void shield technology, and locomotion systems in exhaustive detail. They memorize the litanies and prayers required to awaken each system, understanding that these sacred words are as important as technical knowledge for maintaining the machine spirit's cooperation. Physical conditioning is equally important. While the Mind Impulse unit handles most of the actual control of a Titan, the physical demands of maintaining the MIU connection for extended periods are severe. Candidates undergo intensive training to build endurance, strengthen their cardiovascular systems, and develop the ability to remain alert and focused through fatigue and stress. They learn breathing techniques and meditation practices that will help them maintain calm during the overwhelming experience of bonding with a Titan for the first time. But the most critical aspect of training is psychological preparation. Candidates are taught to strengthen their sense of self, to develop the mental discipline necessary to maintain their identity, even when merged with something vastly larger and more powerful than themselves. They practice meditation techniques designed to help them center their consciousness, creating a stable core of identity that can withstand the pressure of the machine spirit's influence. They are exposed gradually to simulated Miyu connections, carefully controlled experiences that give them a taste of what true bonding will feel like without the risk of actual neural damage. Many candidates fail during this training process. Some lack the neural compatibility necessary for Miyu connection, their brains simply unable to process the artificial neural pathways required for Titan operation. Others have the physical compatibility, but lack the strength of will necessary to maintain their identity during bonding. Still others complete the training successfully but break during their first true connection with a Titan, their minds shattered by the intensity of the experience. The Collegia Titanica accepts these failures as inevitable. Not everyone can become a princeps, and it is better to discover this during training than in the middle of a combat deployment. Those who successfully complete their training are assigned first as moderati, taking positions on Titan crews under the guidance of experienced princeps. This period of service, as moderatus, serves multiple purposes. It provides practical experience with actual Titan operations under combat conditions. It allows candidates to develop working relationships with other crew members and begin to understand the dynamics of the Gestalt consciousness created by the Miyu. And it gives Legion leadership time to evaluate whether the candidate has the qualities necessary for eventual promotion to princeps, tactical acumen, leadership ability, and the psychological resilience to withstand years of bleeding without losing effectiveness. Promotion from moderatus to princeps is a significant achievement, marked by elaborate ceremonies and the granting of new honors and responsibilities. A newly promoted princeps is typically assigned to a smaller Titan, usually a warhound, where they can develop their command skills before potentially being promoted to command larger and more complex god machines. Some princeps remain with the same Titan throughout their careers, developing deep bonds with particular machine spirits. Others are transferred between Titans as the needs of the Legion dictate, their flexibility and ability to adapt to different machine spirits, making them valuable for filling gaps in the command structure. The daily life of a princeps when not deployed varies significantly depending on circumstances. During peacetime or between campaigns, princeps spend much of their time in ongoing training and study. They review tactical scenarios, studying past battles to understand what worked and what did not. They practice with simulators, maintaining their skills and learning to handle situations they have not yet encountered in actual combat. They undergo regular medical examinations, monitoring for signs of neural damage or psychological deterioration, and they spend time in meditation and prayer, strengthening their mental discipline and maintaining their sense of identity against the constant pressure of bleeding. Many princeps also spend time physically present in their Titans, even when not bonded through the Miyu. They walk through the corridors of their god machines, familiarizing themselves with every system and every space. They speak with the tech priests, performing maintenance, learning about the Titan's current condition and any issues that need attention. They spend time in the command throne, not fully bonded but maintaining a light connection through the Miyu, allowing them to sense the machine spirit's current state without the full intensity of combat bonding. This regular contact helps maintain the relationship between princeps and machine spirit, keeping the bond strong even during periods of inactivity. The support infrastructure required to maintain Titan legions is enormous. Each god machine requires a small army of support personnel, tech priests who perform routine maintenance and repairs, servitors who handle heavy labor and dangerous tasks, logistics specialists who ensure adequate supplies of ammunition and spare parts, and command staff who coordinate deployment and tactical planning. A single warlord titan might require a support staff of hundreds of personnel, all working constantly to keep the god machine battle-ready. The tech priests who maintain titans are among the most skilled and experienced members of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Working on god machines requires both extensive technical knowledge and deep understanding of the religious rituals necessary to appease machine spirits. These tech priests spend years apprenticing under more senior artificers, learning the specific quirks and requirements of different titan classes and individual god machines. Each titan has its own unique characteristics, systems that require special attention, or procedures that must be performed in specific ways. The tech priests who maintain a particular titan for years develop intimate knowledge of that machine, understanding it in ways that even its princeps may not fully grasp. Maintenance of titans is a constant process. Even when not deployed, god machines require regular attention to prevent degradation of critical systems. The plasma reactor must be monitored and adjusted to prevent containment field drift. The void shield generators need calibration to maintain proper field harmonics. Weapon systems must be tested and maintained to ensure they will function properly when needed. Hydraulic systems require fluid changes and seal replacement. Armor plating needs to be inspected for stress fractures and corrosion. The list of required maintenance tasks is endless, and falling behind on any of them can result in system failures at critical moments. After combat deployments, the maintenance requirements become even more intensive. Battle damage must be assessed and repaired. Armor plating that has been breached or weakened needs replacement. Weapon systems that have overheated or malfunctioned must be torn down and rebuilt. Void shield generators stressed by absorbing multiple hits need extensive servicing. The plasma reactor may require adjustment or even partial rebuilding if it has been pushed beyond normal operating parameters. This repair work can take weeks or months, during which the Titan is out of action, and its crew must wait anxiously for their god machine to be returned to battle-ready status. The ammunition requirements for Titans are substantial. A single combat deployment might expend hundreds of plasma charges, thousands of megabolter rounds, dozens of missiles, and enormous amounts of energy from the plasma reactor. Resupplying these munitions requires careful coordination with forge worlds and ammunition depots, ensuring that the right types and quantities of ordnance are available when needed. Some ammunition types are relatively common and can be manufactured on most forge worlds, while others are rare and require specific production facilities or techniques that may only be available at certain locations. The logistics of deploying Titans to combat zones presents its own challenges. These god machines are too large to be transported in standard Imperial Navy vessels. They require specially designed transport ships with massive cargo holds and heavy-duty loading equipment. Loading and unloading a Titan is a complex operation that can take hours or days, requiring careful coordination between naval personnel, tech priests, and Titan crew. The Titans must be secured properly to prevent damage during transit, their systems shut down to conserve power and reduce the risk of accidents. Then, upon arrival at the deployment zone, the entire process must be reversed. The Titans reactivated and prepared for combat operations. The ceremonial aspects of Titan operation are as important as the technical ones. Every significant action, from activating a Titan's systems to deploying for combat to completing a successful mission, is marked by specific rituals and prayers. These ceremonies serve multiple purposes. They honor the machine spirits of the Titans, reinforcing the bond between human and machine. They strengthen the sense of unity and purpose among Legion members. And they connect current operations to the long history of the Legion, reminding everyone involved that they are part of something larger and more enduring than any individual campaign or battle. The rituals of activation are particularly elaborate. As tech priests prepare the Titan's systems, they recite specific prayers for each component, asking the machine spirit to awaken and prepare for service. Incense is burned to purify the air and create an appropriate atmosphere for sacred work. Oils blessed by senior tech priests are applied to critical components as anointing oils, honoring the machine and seeking its cooperation. The princeps and crew participate in their own preparatory rituals, prayers, and meditations designed to prepare their minds for the coming bonding with the machine spirit. When a Titan is destroyed in battle, the loss is mourned with elaborate funeral rites. The wreckage, if it can be recovered, is treated with great reverence. Tech priests examine it carefully, salvaging any components that might be usable and collecting sacred oils and fluids for ritual purposes. The machine spirit, if it has somehow survived in fragments of the Titan's systems, is honored and, if possible, transferred to a new body. The crew members who died with the Titan are mourned as heroes, their names added to the rolls of honor that record all who have fallen in the Legion's service. The Titan itself is remembered in ceremonies and prayers, its deeds recounted, and its sacrifice honored as an example for future generations. The maintenance and support requirements for Titans are also substantial. Each god machine requires a small army of tech priests, servitors, and support personnel to keep it functional. The plasma reactors must be carefully maintained and blessed according to ancient rituals. The void shield generators require constant adjustment and calibration. The weapon systems need regular servicing and ammunition that may be difficult or impossible to manufacture outside of specific forge worlds. All of this creates a substantial logistical burden that must be carefully managed. The relationship between a Titan Legion and the Adeptus Mechanicus, the machine cult of Mars, is fundamental to the Legion's identity. While Titan Legions maintain their own command structures and operational independence, they are ultimately subordinate to the Mechanicus and rely on the tech priests for the maintenance and care of their god machines. This creates a complex political situation where princeps must balance their military judgment with the religious beliefs and political interests of the Mechanicus. Some conflicts between military necessity and religious protocol are inevitable. A princeps may believe that a particular tactic or maneuver is necessary for victory, but if it would risk damage to their Titan in ways the tech priests consider unacceptable, they may face resistance or even direct orders to refrain. The most successful princeps learn to work within these constraints, building relationships with senior tech priests and demonstrating appropriate reverence for the machine spirits they command. But tensions are always present, a constant reminder that Titans are not simply weapons to be deployed at will, but sacred relics that must be treated with appropriate respect. We should discuss some of the most famous Titan engagements in Imperial history, battles that have become legendary within the Adeptus Titanicus, and offer insight into what it truly means to fight as a god machine. The Battle of Talan stands as perhaps the largest tank battle in Imperial history, with millions of armored vehicles clashing across the poisoned wastes of a world devastated by orbital bombardment. Titans from multiple legions participated in this massive engagement, striding through the toxic atmosphere to break enemy formations and create opportunities for Imperial armor to exploit. Princeps who fought at Talan describe a surreal experience of wading through an ocean of vehicles, their Titans stepping over or simply crushing lesser tanks as they sought out worthy opponents. The sheer scale of the battle meant that even god machines could become lost in the chaos, surrounded by so many enemies that targeting solutions became almost meaningless. Some Titans were destroyed not by enemy Titans or super heavy weapons, but by the simple expedient of being overwhelmed by conventional forces, their void shields brought down by sustained fire from hundreds of tanks before massed fire could cripple critical systems. The Siege of Vrax was another engagement where Titans played a critical role. This 18-year siege of a heavily fortified world saw Titans deployed in the grinding, attritional warfare that characterizes siege operations. Rather than the sweeping maneuvers and dramatic engagements of open warfare, Titans at Vrax were used to methodically reduce defensive fortifications, their heavy weapons battering down walls and bunkers while enduring sustained fire from enemy artillery and anti-Titan positions. Princeps who served at Vrax described the psychological toll of this type of warfare as particularly severe. The constant exposure to enemy fire, the slow advance measured in yards rather than miles, the knowledge that each day brought more damage to their Titans that might not be fully repairable, all combined to create immense strain. Some Princeps developed a kind of fatalistic acceptance, knowing that their Titans would eventually be destroyed, but determined to inflict maximum damage before that inevitable end. The Horus Heresy represents perhaps the darkest chapter in Titan Legion history. When the War Master Horus turned traitor and led half the Space Marine legions in rebellion against the Emperor, many Titan legions were forced to choose sides. Some remained loyal to the Imperium, others followed their forged worlds into betrayal, and some were torn apart by internal conflict as individual princeps made different choices. The psychological impact of Titan fighting Titan, of god machines that had served together for centuries, suddenly becoming mortal enemies, cannot be overstated. Princeps who fought in the heresy describe it as the most traumatic experience of their long service. They were not simply fighting enemies. They were fighting former comrades, Titans whose machine spirits they knew personally, crews they had trained and fought beside. The bonds of brotherhood that normally unite the Adeptus Titanicus were shattered, replaced by bitter hatred and desperate battles where quarter was neither asked nor given. The Siege of Terra, the climactic battle of the heresy, saw the largest concentration of Titans ever assembled. Hundreds of god machines clashed in the ruins of humanity's homeworld, their weapons reducing ancient cities to molten slag as they fought for the fate of the Imperium. Princeps described the battle as apocalyptic, a scene of destruction so vast that even their tangent-scale perspective struggled to comprehend it. The machine spirits of Titans that fought at Terra were forever marked by the experience, their personalities shaped by the trauma of fighting in mankind's most desperate hour. Now we must address the darkest aspect of Titan warfare, the Chaos Titans, god machines that have fallen to the corruption of the warp and the temptation of the dark gods. The process by which a Titan becomes corrupted varies, but certain patterns emerge from the records of fallen legions. Sometimes the corruption begins with the Princeps, a warrior whose mind has been weakened by years of bleeding, who becomes susceptible to the whispers of chaos. The promises of power, the seduction of freedom from all constraints, these can be powerful lures for someone who has spent years fighting against the hunger of their machine spirit and the demands of their superiors. Other times, the corruption enters through the machine spirit itself. Titans that have been exposed to warp energies, either through combat against demonic forces or through being trapped in warp storms, can develop strange appetites and behaviors. The machine spirit begins to hunger, not just for battle, but for specific types of destruction or suffering. It may develop preferences that align with the nature of particular chaos gods. A hunger for skulls and blood that marks Khorne's influence, a taste for excess and sensation that suggests Slanesh, a love of decay and corruption that indicates Nurgle, or a desire for change and mutation that reveals Tzientch's touch. Regardless of how the corruption begins, once it takes hold, it spreads rapidly. The MIU link that allows Princeps and machine spirit to merge also provides a pathway for chaos to flow between them. A corrupted Princeps infects their Titan. A corrupted machine spirit corrupts its crew. Within weeks or months, what was once a proud servant of the Imperium becomes a thing of nightmare. A chaos Titan that serves the dark gods with the same fervor it once served the Emperor. The appearance of Chaos Titans is disturbing to behold. Their armor warps and twists, sprouting spikes and mutations that serve no rational purpose. Demonic faces may appear in the metal, screaming silently or whispering blasphemies. The weapons take on grotesque aspects, becoming not simply tools of destruction, but instruments of torture and suffering. And the machine spirit itself becomes something else entirely, a being of malice and hunger that delights in causing pain and destruction for their own sake. What it feels like to be a Chaos Titan, to bond with a machine spirit that has been twisted by the warp, is difficult to describe, because few who fall to chaos retain enough of their original personality to articulate the experience coherently. But from the fragmented accounts of Chaos Princeps who have been captured or killed, certain themes emerge. The constant hunger of the machine spirit is no longer restrained by any sense of purpose or discipline. It becomes all-consuming, driving the Princeps to seek out battle and slaughter without regard for tactics or strategy. The bleeding accelerates dramatically, the boundaries between human and machine dissolving until the Princeps becomes little more than an extension of the corrupted machine spirit's will. But there is also a perverse satisfaction described by some fallen Princeps. free from the constraints of imperial doctrine, free from the constant struggle to maintain discipline and control. They embrace the hunger fully. They become what the machine spirit has always wanted them to be: pure instruments of destruction, reveling in the slaughter without thought for consequences or morality. For someone who has spent years or decades fighting against the machine spirit's nature, this surrender can feel like liberation, like finally being able to express their true self without restraint. The horror of this perspective is that it reveals the fundamental danger of the Titan bonding process. Every princeps walks a narrow path between human discipline and machine hunger. Those who fall to chaos are not necessarily weak-willed or evil. They are simply those who lost their balance, who slipped from that narrow path and discovered that falling can feel like flying, at least until they hit the bottom. Imperial Titans that encounter their fallen brothers in battle experience a complex mix of emotions. There is horror at seeing what they themselves could become if they falter. There is rage at the betrayal of oaths and duty. There is sorrow for the loss of comrades who were once brothers in arms. And there is a grim determination to destroy the corrupted god machine before it can spread its taint further. These battles are always desperate and brutal, fought with an intensity that exceeds normal engagements because both sides understand that this is more than just tactical warfare. This is a battle for the soul of the Adeptus Titanicus itself. As we approach the conclusion of our examination of what it means to be a Titan, we must consider the ultimate fate of those who serve as princeps. Very few princeps die peacefully in their beds, surrounded by loved ones and honored for their service. The nature of their calling almost guarantees a more violent end. Some die in battle, their titans destroyed by enemy fire, their bodies consumed in the catastrophic explosion of a ruptured plasma reactor. This is considered an honorable death, quick and clean, sparing the princeps from the slow decline that awaits those who serve too long. Others burn out gradually, their minds consumed by years of bleeding, until they can no longer function as effective princeps. These warriors are often retired to monastery hospitals, run by the Adeptus Titanicus, facilities where they can live out their remaining years in relative comfort, while receiving treatment for their various neurological and psychological conditions. But such retirements are often brief. The toll taken by years of Miu connection is severe, and many retired princeps survive only months or years after their final disconnection. A few princeps, those whose minds have been too damaged to allow them to function independently, but whose bodies remain viable, are interred in the Titans themselves, becoming permanent components of the god machine's control systems. This is both honor and horror. The princeps achieves a kind of immortality, their consciousness merged permanently with the machine spirit, but they lose all connection to their original humanity in the process. These interred princeps are treated as saints by their legions, revered as warriors who have transcended the flesh entirely to become one with their god machine. But whether they retain enough consciousness to understand or appreciate this honor remains an open question. The legacy of a princeps is measured not in years of service or number of battles fought, but in the mark they leave on their Titan's machine spirit. Each princeps who bonds with a god machine contributes something to its personality, adding their own experiences and perspectives to the accumulated knowledge of generations. The greatest princeps are those who manage to strengthen their Titan's machine spirit without being consumed by it, who add to the god machine's capability while maintaining their own identity. These are the warriors whose names are remembered long after their deaths, whose tactical innovations are studied by future generations, whose personalities continue to influence their Titans' behavior centuries after their bodies have turned to dust. But even these legendary figures ultimately fade into the machine's vast memory, becoming just another layer in the accumulated consciousness of a Titan that has served for thousands of years. The individual may be forgotten, but their contribution to the whole endures. In this sense, perhaps, there is a form of immortality available to princeps. They become part of something greater than themselves, their consciousness merged not just with their crew or their machine spirit, but with the eternal legacy of the Adeptus Titanicus itself. What does it mean to be a Titan in Warhammer 40K? It means to walk as a god while knowing you are ultimately just a mortal in a shell of metal. It means to wield power beyond comprehension, while fighting constantly to maintain control over that power. It means to bond with an ancient intelligence that can never truly be understood or fully controlled. It means to slowly lose yourself in pursuit of something greater, trading your humanity for the capability to defend humanity itself. It is a bargain that millions of young warriors have made over the millennia, drawn by the promise of glory and the chance to serve the Emperor in the most dramatic and powerful way imaginable. Some find what they seek, becoming legends whose deeds echo through the ages. Others find only madness and death, consumed by the very machines they sought to master. But all of them, every princeps who has ever bonded with a Titan, share the knowledge that they have experienced something beyond normal human comprehension. They have walked as gods, if only for a time, and that experience, with all its glory and horror, can never be taken from them. The Titans continue to stride across battlefields throughout the Imperium, their weapons speaking with voices of thunder, their footsteps shaking the ground, their presence inspiring terror in enemies and hope in allies. Within each one is a crew of highly trained warriors, their consciousnesses merged with ancient machine intelligences, fighting constantly to maintain the balance between human discipline and mechanical hunger. They are the Adeptus Titanicus, the god machines of the Imperium, and they will continue their eternal war as long as the Imperium endures. If you've made it this far into our deep dive into the world of Titans, I hope you've gained a new appreciation for the complexity and depth of these incredible war machines and the warriors who crew them. The experience of bonding with a Titan represents one of the most unique and challenging aspects of service in the Imperium of Man, a perfect example of the grimdark future where there is only war and the price of survival is measured in souls as much as in lives. If you enjoyed this exploration of Titan lore, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There's so much more to explore in the Warhammer 40K universe, and your support helps me continue creating these deep dives into the darkest corners of the setting. Thank you for watching, and until next time, may the Emperor protect.
I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share button, whatever you want. Give me some feedback if there's any, and yeah, sleep well.